Hey everybody, here we are together once again as we continue looking at adding and subtracting of rational numbers. And in this third and final video for today, we're looking at subtracting rational numbers. All right, so as always, I just want to begin with a couple of reminders. Again, as we are moving on the number line, we can move to the left. Sorry, we can move. Yes, now I'm on the left. We can move to the left or we can move to the right. And when it comes to moving to the right, that's when we are subtracting a negative. All right, we usually think of moving to the right as adding a positive, but of course we can subtract a negative. All right, if we want to move to the left, that's when we are subtracting a positive. Okay? So anytime you subtract a negative, you should be moving to the right on the number line. Anytime you subtract a positive, you should be moving to the left on a number line. All right, so and another thing to remind you of, all right, subtraction is equivalent to adding the opposite, okay? So many times we simply change a subtraction problem to adding the opposite, and then we just go back to what we learned to do with addition, okay? Excuse me. Wow. Wow. That was an inconvenient time for a sneeze now, wasn't it? All right, so if we take a look at these first problems right here, this first one, again, one more reminder, rational numbers is any number that can be written as a fraction a over b, where a and b are integers and b is not equal to 0. This first problem is actually integers, all right? So this second one, these are mixed numbers. Back to integers, these are decimals. We don't actually have any pure fraction problems right up here at the top of the page. All right, so a couple different ways. If we take a look at this one on the number line, we would start at 5, but since we're subtracting a negative, that would go to the right, and we would go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that would land us at positive 13. We could also say subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. And of course, 5 plus 8 is 13. Again, adding a positive is another way to go to the right. And of course, adding a negative is how you go to the left. So subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, and subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. So if we are over here on the number line, again, if we were going to do this one, we could start at negative 3 1/2, which would be right there. And they want us to subtract 4 1/2. Well, that's subtracting a positive. So we'd go to the left 1, right? There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And where would we end up with? We would end up at negative 7 1/2. Right? Whoops. You know what? I only went negative 4. I was supposed to go negative 4 1/2. My apologies. All right, so from there to there would be 1. From there to there is 2. From there to there is 3. From there to there is 4. And then I left off the first time that last half. So we actually end up at negative 8. Okay? This is why it's good to check your answers. All right, subtracting a positive, right? Subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. And we could say 3 negatives plus 4 negatives, that makes 7 negatives, right? And a negative 1/2 plus a negative 1/2, that equals negative 1, and that's how we end up at negative 8. If we weren't doing it on the number line, we could do it that way. All right, negative 7 minus 4. Again, if we're on the number line, we could start at negative 7 and go back 1, 2, 3, 4. And you could see that lands us at negative 11, right? Or we could say subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. 7 negatives plus 4 negatives. Again, we talked about this in the last video. That simply moves us to the left. All right, and finally here, negative 0.5. Negative 0.5 would be right here, right? Here's negative 0.5, right? This one here would be negative 1.5. This one here would be negative 2.5, and so on. So negative 0.5, and they want us to go 3.5 to the left. All right, so there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 0.5 right there, and we end up at negative 4, right? Negative 4 is where we end up. We could also look at this as subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative. So we have negative 0.5, and then I would break this up into negative 3 plus negative 0.5. Why did I do that? Because that one plus that one makes negative 1, and negative 1, right? Negative 1 plus that negative 3 makes negative 4. All right, so there's some examples of using the number line. Of course, you don't have to use the number line as I just demonstrated. All right, I'm going to go over here and do a couple of the fraction problems because we didn't have any fractions up here. All right, 1/3 minus a negative 2/3. Again, I'm going to take advantage of that knowledge that subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, right? And we have our common denominator, so 1/3 plus 2/3 is 3/3. But of course, we're going to write that as 1, aren't we? Okay. All right. What about one like this? This one is kind of tricky. Negative 2/9 minus 3. All right. So in a case like this, I want to have a common denominator, right? Or at least maybe write this as a mixed number with ninths. So negative 3 is negative 2 plus negative 1. Do you guys agree with that? Again, this is part of what we did with those I ready skills. That's why I really wanted you to do that I ready, to see this idea of breaking it up, right? So that's negative 2 plus negative 9/9. All right? So what I have here is negative 2/9. And then remember, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, right? So that's going to make this positive, and that's going to make this positive. So again, I had subtracting a negative. I changed it to adding a positive. So what do I have now? Now I have 3 parts. I have negative 2/9. I have a positive 2. And I have a positive 9/9. And why do I like this? Because that positive 2 I can write here, and 9 positive ninths plus 2 negative ninths is going to give me 7/9. So I get 2 and 7/9. So again, just to summarize what I have here is I have a negative 2/9 plus a positive 2 and 9/9, right? And that 9/9 minus that 2/9 gives me that 7/9, and I get 2 and 7/9. All right, if we look at this problem over here, mixed numbers, I've got 24 and 3/8 minus a negative 54, but subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. And what do I like now? They're all positives. I could just put them all together, right? 24 plus 54, well, that's going to give me 78, and 3/8 and 1/8, that's going to give me 4/8. But we know, careful, 4/8 is equal to 1/2, so we want to make sure we always simplify. Okay? So to go over those principles again that we talked about, if you're going to the right, subtracting a negative, well, that's the same as adding a positive. And if you're going to the left, subtracting a positive, that is the same as adding a negative. So we can do it on a number line, or we can do it without a number line. And breaking it up into its parts can be very, very helpful. All right, let me do one more right here. Negative 12.5. Again, I'm going to change this to plus 4.8. So I have negative 12.5. And I'm going to change that 4.8 to 4.5 plus 0.3. All right, and I'm going to change this negative 12.5 to negative 8 plus negative 4.5. Now, why did I go through all that trouble? Because, again, what do I have right here? I have opposites that are going to cancel. Okay, those opposites cancel. And then I simply end up with the problem negative 8 plus 0.3. All right, and that's going to give me negative 7.7. All right, again, you don't have to do it that way, But breaking it up into its parts and canceling off those zeros, it's a great skill, and it makes it a lot easier to do if you don't have a calculator or if you're going to avoid the traditional way of doing it, which is not always a lot of fun. All right, so let's do a few word problems and then we'll be done. All right, a girl is snorkeling 1 meter below sea level and then she dives down another half a meter, 0.5. All right, so she is down 1 and then she is down a negative 0.5, right? So that gives us negative 1.5 or 1.5 feet below sea level. That's where she's at, okay? All right, the first play of a football game resulted in a loss of 12.5 yards. So that's a negative 12.5. Then a penalty got lost another 5 yards. So that's minus 5. All right, so they're going back, and then they go back more, right? So we're just going to get further in the negative direction, and we're going to end up at negative 17.5 or 17.5 yard loss is the way that we should put it. By the way, subtracting a positive is the same as adding a negative, so we could see that we are just adding those negatives together. All right, and then these ones here, I think these are the trickiest ones. A climber starts descending from 533 feet above sea level. So here's 0. I'm going to put 533 feet here. All right, and then she's going to go to negative 10 feet below sea level. How many feet did she descend? Well, she went all the way down. Now, if we just think about it, right, she went 533 feet down, and then she went another 10 feet down. So that would be a total of 633 feet that she descended. Now, if we were going to write this as a problem, it would be 533 minus a negative 10, because if you want to find the distance, okay, if you want to find the distance between two numbers, you always subtract. Let me say that again. If you want to find the distance between two numbers, you always subtract. And as we've said many times here, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. All right, last problem. All right, Elena withdrew $45 from her savings account. So that's going to be a negative 45, right? She then used her debit card to buy groceries for $30.15. So we're going to subtract another $30.15. What was the total that she took out of her account? All right, well, subtracting that $30.15 is the same as adding a negative. So we had a negative 45 to start off with. We have another negative 30.15, and what do we get? We get negative 75.15. By the way, just a reminder, when you put money in, when you deposit money, that would be adding, right? So if she then went, let's just add on to this. Let's say she added $20 to her account. Well, then we would go and we would add $20, right? And then we would say, what do we have more of? We have $55.15 more in the negative direction. I just wanted to throw that in because you are going to have some problems that mix both adding and subtracting together. But remember, any subtraction problem, right? Any subtraction problem can be changed to adding the opposites. So every subtraction problem actually can be converted to addition problem, and then all you have to know how to do is add. All right, well, I hope this video helped you. As always, if you need more help, feel free to email me. Till next time, bye.